What's going on, guys? Justin with 1791. Thanks for watching. Today we're talking about basic pistol marksmanship, so let's get into it. So a lot of you guys might be thinking, okay, why am I going to waste my time watching a basic pistol marksmanship video? I already know how to shoot. So if that's you, I promise you, you are wrong. Because even the best, most highly trained individuals out there, they train the basics all the time. You know why? Because shooting a gun's not complicated. There are a few things to pay attention to, but the most important thing is that when you are training and practicing, you are doing the correct thing over and over and over again. And what that does is it creates good, safe marksmanship fundamentals that are ingrained into your muscle memory, so that when you are faced with the worst day of your life, you don't have to think about the pew-pew thing, right? That just happens, and you can focus on the multitude of other things that are going on in that environment to make sure that you can get the job done and do it safely and do it legally, because there are always going to be legal implications when you jerk your pistol and shoot somebody, okay? There are going to be legal implications, and you need to make sure that your conscious mind is freed up enough to where you can focus on the means, opportunity, and jeopardy of that circumstance. Make sure that you use your firearm in a justified manner, and that the shooting part just kind of takes care of itself. So that is why it is very important, even if you're a seasoned shooter, to really think through the fundamentals, consciously devote active thought to the fundamentals, especially when you're shooting, so that that becomes a muscle memory type of action. That also applies to the safety. So the main 4 firearm safety rules are treat, never, keep. All right, treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point a weapon at anything you don't intend to destroy. Keep your finger straight and off the trigger until you're on target with the intent to fire. Keep the gun on safety until you're on target with the intent to fire. There is also the be aware of your target's foreground and background before making the decision to fire. So there's a few things you need to pay attention to there. The whole point of having those firearm safety rules, and you don't need to add any extra, you don't need to, like, you go to a range and there's like 10 commandments of gun safety. Like, where do we get 10? There's 4, 5 at most, depending on if you add the whole safety, like keep the weapon on safety until you're on target with the intent to fire. These are the 4 firearm safety rules I was trained on in the Navy. And then be aware of your target's foreground and background before making a decision to fire. That is also a very, very primary safety consideration. So consciously paying attention to those safety fundamentals, what that does is it ingrains that safety, the safe gun handling practices into your subconscious thought, so that when you're handling a pistol, you are inherently safe. You pull the gun out, it's pointed in a safe direction. When I am not actively shooting, I'll inherently have the gun pointed in a safe direction, whether it's in the up position or whether it's in the down position. If you were a real person over there and I'm shooting over here and I suddenly need to shoot over there, I bring the gun in and have it down, turn, and I aim over there. You may be technically downrange, but there was nothing inherently unsafe about what I did there, and I did not violate any firearm safety rules if you were a real person standing right in front of me, because I did not point the gun at you. So treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point a weapon at anything we do not intend to destroy. Keep the finger straight and off the trigger until you're on target with the intent to fire. Keep the weapon on safety until you're on target with the intent to fire. And then be aware of your target's foreground and background before making the decision to fire. Now, those are the firearm safety stuff. We're going to get right into the marksmanship stuff now. The way I used to explain to students our firearms marksmanship is GSSBT. GSSBT. So grip, stance, sights, breathing, and trigger control. So with your grip, and they're actually in order of precedence, they're in order of operation. So you need to establish a grip before you can establish your stance. Like those two things are kind of like, they kind of happen at the same time. So grip, stance, sights, breathing, trigger control. So I'm going to establish my grip, and we're going to be simultaneously talking about drawing too. Now I'll be moving around a lot just because every time I draw the pistol I like to move off the line of attack. That is just a good habit to get into. So I'm going to move off the line of attack while I'm simultaneously clearing my garment, and I'm establishing my grip, right? So then I'm going to draw. The weapon is going to come straight up, and then I'm going to elbow down to get the weapon oriented in the direction of the target. And as the weapon is coming out, I'm going to snake my hand in behind and fully establish my grip, right? Fully establish my grip. So now we're pretending that you are not just an innocent bystander. We're pretending that you are the bad guy now because I have my weapon pointed at you. So your grip is very important. I'm going to take a quick caveat there. Just take a look at the grip. It's almost like there's some sort of biomechanical design behind this, right? We have this little crook of your thumb knuckle right there, and you have a little joint bone back here at the back of your hand, and that joint bone fits right there, kind of like Legos, like peanut butter and jelly. My fingers are down at a kind of a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to wrap them around, and I'm going to have my thumbs pointed forward and perfectly parallel. Both of my thumbs are pointed at the target, right? Notice how there's no skin, notice how there's skin-to-skin contact there. There's no gap. We don't want to see a gap. We don't want to see part of the black pistol there between the grip. Basically, you should see nothing about the pistol except for the slide and maybe part of the trigger guard when it comes to a good grip. That's what we're looking for. Wrapping my fingers around just like that. So grip, that's it. There's a lot of different schools of thought on how hard you want to squeeze the pistol. Kind of think of it like this, like a firm handshake. Like rewind back to like the 50s, 60s, 70s when people still gave each other a firm handshake, right? And hopefully you were raised with someone that taught you that when you give someone a firm handshake, you give a firm handshake, you make eye contact, that good thing. But the type of grip of a firm handshake, that's kind of subjective because I know now a lot of times people don't even do a firm handshake anymore. But yeah, a good firm handshake, that's typically the amount of tension that I like to put into squeezing the pistol. Now, if that's still too subjective for you, a friend of mine used to say, James Yeager used to say, when in doubt, just squeeze the shit out of it. All right. So yeah, just a good firm grip. I can see my knuckles kind of turning white a little bit. That's a good firm handshake. Good, yeah, just like that. So yeah, a good firm grip. Now that grip is not just in the hands, okay? That grip also applies to the muscular tension in my forearms. It also applies to the muscular tension in my triceps, my shoulders, throughout my back and my core. That grip is not just in the pistol. The grip is like your biomechanical interface with the pistol. You want to tense up the muscles in your core too, all right? That's also going to give you a good stable grip. Now, I've seen people like say turn your elbows way out. I've seen people like turn your elbows in. Just push the weapon out and let your elbows land where they're naturally going to land, all right? Because you're not going to be thinking about what to do with your elbows in a gunfight. So what you want to do is establish that good even grip, even pressure with your right hand and your left hand. Press the weapon straight out and let your elbows naturally kind of lock where they lock. My elbows don't come completely straight, because when I tense up the muscles in my triceps and my forearms and my shoulders, and I bring the weapon out to its kind of locked position, my arms are not completely straight. There is muscular tension being applied to that bone and skeletal structure, and that muscular structure, that right here is where it's kind of locked, and my elbows are not completely straight. So that is grip, guys. I'm not just talking about your hand on the pistol. Grip is like your body's interface with the gun. Next is stance. A good stance is a natural athletic stance where typically your non-dominant foot is going to be slightly ahead of your dominant foot. You're going to have a slight bend in the knees, and you're going to have a slight lean forward in the hips. And that's really all I'm going to talk about as far as stance. Other than this, if you have a great stance, you're either not moving fast enough or you're not properly utilizing cover, all right? What is more important when it comes to stance is getting your stance to the position where like your stance is applicable while you are moving, all right? You can think of like your lower body as the lower half of the tank, and your upper body is like the turret of the tank, and you can be moving this way, and you can move that turret however it needs to move, and you still have a good, appropriate, and agile stance to where you can get good hits, but you're also not static. You don't have this like perfect shooting stance where you're doing like, you look like you're a spec ops guy with this perfect stance, but like if there's no movement involved with that stance, then it's not actually a stance, all right? You're just standing there looking cool for the internet. So grip, stance, sights, breathing, trigger control. When it comes to sights, I'm going to specifically talk about iron sights because that's what I have on here, but this also applies. This also applies to red dot. A red dot just kind of simplifies the aiming solution that you are using. So I have XS big dot sights on here. We're not affiliated with XS Big Dot Sights. I'm personal friends with some of the folks over at XS Big Dot Sights, so I personally like their stuff. But yeah, great sights for combat. You have this big old orange dot that I have up here, and I just saddle that in this little V-notch back here. And the most important thing is that you are focusing on the front sight, all right? Because there's a lot going on. You have rear sight, front sight target. Maybe there's a distraction over here, whatever. When it comes time for shooting, for doing the pew-pew thing, you want to focus on the front sight and keep that crystal clear, just because that is going to give you the best accuracy potential, because that front sight is the greatest predictor of where the bullet's going to go. Even if the front sight kind of moves around in that rear sight, basically if the front sight's over here, the bullet's going to hit over here. If the front sight's over here, the bullet's going to hit over here. If the front sight's way up here, the bullet's going to hit way up here, etc. You get what I'm talking about. So that front sight is going to be the greatest predictor of where the bullet's going to go. So you need to keep that as clear as possible and keep it aligned within the rear sight within reason, but it does not have to be perfect to get good combat effective hits. So grip, stance, sights, breathing, trigger control. Next thing is trigger control. Now when it comes to managing that trigger, you need to make sure that when it comes time for doing the shooting thing, you keep good, firm, consistent contact on the trigger at all times. So visual, physical, check. I'm just going to move this stuff away because I'm not doing trigger stuff. All right, so I'm going to kind of do a side profile here. So when it comes to managing the trigger, as soon as it's time to put your finger inside the trigger guard, immediately when you believe that is reasonable that you need to start shooting, you're going to place your finger on the trigger and be prepared to fire. That can even start back here. If you feel that it is reasonable that you may need to fire and you're pointed in the intended direction of the intended target, it's okay to put your finger inside the trigger guard right here, so long as you are pointed downrange with the intent to fire. So as I'm coming up, I can start to prep that trigger, and this is a very important thing, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I really like Glocks, because they have more of a combat-oriented trigger and not like a match trigger, you know what I mean? It's kind of tough to do this with 1911s, because a lot of 1911s, they have a really nice trigger, right? They're really made for kind of a precision shot, which is great. But if you're prepping the trigger with a 1911, it's with most good 1911s, if you start to prep the trigger, it's just going to go off. All right. So that's where I want to go ahead and kind of inject a safety thing in here. If you're a 1911 guy, stay a 1911 guy. Don't screw around with other pistols. If you're a Glock guy, stay a Glock guy. Don't screw around with other pistols. It is okay to occasionally like take your 1911 to the range and play around with it, but the trigger is such a big deal when it comes to shooting, right? And that muscle memory is such a big deal when it comes to shooting accurately and shooting repeatably. And it's also a safety factor. If I'm really used to this kind of like spongy Glock trigger, I'm really used to that trigger, and then I go out to the range and I'm using like a 1911 with like a 3-pound trigger or whatever, you're gonna end up like Tex grabbing, or you're gonna shoot yourself in the leg. All right. So be really, really careful what you're doing with that trigger, all right? If you're a Glock guy, stay a Glock guy. If you're a 1911 guy, stay a 1911 guy. That's awesome. Just pick something that's reliable and that you can get really good with, and something that you can use safely. But if you're flip-flopping between different guns all the time, you're an ER visit waiting to happen, dude, okay? Just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so trigger. So as I'm coming up, I'm prepping that trigger, and when I come to full extension, I feel that wall. If I give it just a few more ounces, it's gone. Boom. Now the gun's gonna cycle, boom, right? Now when it cycles, I'm gonna keep my finger on that trigger. I've kept it depressed. Now as I release, listen for it, I come out maybe like 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little further, and there's a click, all right? So that click is that trigger reset. Now I still have that firm tension on the trigger. I have not released it all the way yet. There's a very important thing behind that, because number one, there's going to be less travel now if I need to shoot again. So it's going to make that next follow-up shot more consistent, versus if I were to just completely release the trigger and take my finger off, and then I need to go back and I need to go take back all of that take up, and now I'm at the wall again. So if I just keep my finger on that trigger while it cycles, reset, pull, reset, pull. That is going to be the most consistent way to develop follow-up shots, shot after shot after shot after shot. You can keep them pretty tight, so long as you have really good trigger manipulation. Now, mastering the trigger, I promise you, is going to be the most difficult thing that you do when it comes to marksmanship. The most difficult thing that you do. Because the old adage that I used to tell students is like, shooting a rifle is a lot like driving a car or a truck, right? You can get some really basic instruction and then you're off to the races. Like you can drive all over the place. There's a lot of 10-year-old farm boys that can confirm that, even in my neck of the woods here. I first started learning how to drive like a car or truck, whatever, tractor. I started learning that stuff when I was really young, not even 10. But shooting a handgun comparatively is much more like flying a helicopter. All right, there's just a lot more going on that you need to pay attention to, and a really good helicopter pilot is comparable to a really good pistol shooter. They can fly that helicopter all over the place. I have a good buddy of mine that was a 160th SOAR pilot. Hey Todd, maybe I'll send this video to you. He can fly a helicopter like a maniac. because he's mastered the principles of avionics, and he can fly, or he basically, all of the manipulations of that helicopter is muscle memory. That's what we're doing here when it comes to shooting a pistol. We're working through the fundamentals that we can ingrain as muscle memory, so that when it comes time to do the shooty pew pew thing, like running this handgun is a lot like a 160th SOAR pilot flying a helicopter. All right. So grip, stance, sights, breathing, trigger control. We skipped breathing. We'll talk about that. So when it comes to breathing, some people say like you want to shoot at a respiratory pause, and what I hear a lot of precision marksmanship people say is like shoot at the bottom of your breath. Like take a good breath, let it out, and then at the bottom of that breath you have about 3 seconds where you have a good natural respiratory pause to where you can take that shot. That's not completely true. It's half true, because there are 2 respiratory pauses. You have your inhale and your exhale. It's like a sine wave in electronics, right? So inhale, respiratory pause, exhale, respiratory pause. Those respiratory pauses are where you're going to be able to yield the most marksmanship, because your body is at a good natural physiological rest. Excuse me. But you have 2 respiratory pauses, not just 1, that you can utilize for maximum marksmanship. Now when it comes to combat shooting, you can throw all that out the window and just remember this. Just breathe, all right? Make sure that you are breathing and getting that oxygenated blood throughout your body, so that you do not have any physiological alarm bells going off that are becoming a distraction for marksmanship. You're also trying to make sure that you can keep plenty of oxygenated blood going to your brain, going to the cones of your eyes and stuff like that, to make sure that you can maximize your physiological advantages as a predator, to make sure that you're not taking away from those capabilities that you have, like your binocular style vision. Like a human being is such an incredible animal. We have quite good hearing, we have really good vision, we have very strong visual acuity. So make sure that you're breathing so that you can keep those assets in full function on the worst day of your life, when your body is going through already a massive physiological alarm of that fight or flight type of scenario. So grip, stance, sights, breathing, trigger control. So I'm going to, we'll start, we're going to bring this all together, all right? Danger check, good. All right, so get off the line of attack, establish my grip. Draw, elbow down, punching it straight out as I'm simultaneously establishing my grip. Sorry, my knife is starting to come up. All right, simultaneously establishing my grip. Then, when I'm ready, I can place my finger on the trigger, and I'm making sure that I'm breathing. Focus on the front sight. Squeeze, 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 surprise. The gun went off, it cycled. Release, 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 click. Squeeze, 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 surprise. Now, something that you can do when you're out training with your friends to really work on that trigger is a trick it's a lot like this. It's easier to do with 2 people. Take an empty shell casing. I'll just use this shell here. It's a live shell, so we'll just set it right on top of the slide, and you're going to balance it, and you're going to aim. You're not going to see your front sight anymore, but you can basically use the shell casing as your front sight. Squeeze, 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 surprise. So the goal of a good, smooth trigger press is that that shell casing does not move and does not fall when you do this. Like I said, it's easier to do when you go out with friends and have the friend place the shell casing on top of the gun. When you're doing that, obviously you're going to do that without a round in the chamber, otherwise the shell casing is going to come off regardless of how smooth your trigger press is. But yeah, like unload the gun, make sure it's clear and safe, come out to a full extension, and have your buddy put a shell casing on top of the gun, and then just practice that good smooth trigger press. making sure that the shell casing's not going to fall off. And when you get really, really good, and if you have more of a squared off front sight, you should be able to place that shell casing on top of the front sight and be able to squeeze and that thing not fall off. My XS big dot sights are rounded, so I can't do that, but I've done that before in training classes with people, just to show them how important a good smooth trigger press is. And immediately after showing them that, their marksmanship cleaned up dramatically, because so much about marksmanship hinges on your trigger manipulation and your mastery of the trigger manipulation. So again, just to recap, grip, stance, sights, breathing, trigger control. Big takeaways: your grip is your entire body, not just your hands. Your stance is only as good as you can manage a shooting stance while moving. So make sure that your shooting stance is conducive to movement and that you can shoot effectively on the move and maintain a good stance while moving. So grip, stance, sights. Make sure that you're focusing on your front sight. That's the most important thing to focus on, is focusing on the front sight. Make sure that you're breathing. If you need maximum marksmanship capability, maximum marksmanship capacity, then you can shoot at the top of your breath or at the bottom. Again, the sine wave. Both, you have two respiratory pauses, inhale and on the exhale. And then T for trigger. The last thing that you're going to do when it comes to using your firearm for self-defense is squeezing the trigger, right? There's a lot of things that are going to happen after that, but when it comes to the shooting part, that's usually the end of it, right? So make sure that you have a good, firm, even squeeze on the trigger all the way, not just to the shot, but through the shot, kind of like a free throw, right? You're going to have that good follow through. So squeeze not just to the shot, but all the way through the shot, and then release, 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 click. You're going to release, 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 release till you feel that trigger reset, and you're not going to take your finger any further. Basically, you're at that wall and you're ready to shoot again. So that's basic marksmanship and drawing in a nutshell. I'll go through it one more time, just a little bit more at speed, offline, just like that. So everything that I talked about can be wrapped up into like a 1.5 second procedure. That's how much intentionality goes into managing good combat effective marksmanship. Making sure that you can practice that enough times to where it is so inherently muscle memory that you can do it in like a second, 1.5 seconds, and you're going to get a good combat effective hit. So thanks for watching, guys. If you got something out of this video, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all the good things. This is Justin with 1791. Train hard and carry your gun.